Hey everyone, Alpha Eagle here again. Welcome back to my channel. I pray you're all doing well, and may God bless you all. The controversy over X-Men 97 continues. One of my biggest pet peeves regarding politics and the culture war is the straw manning of arguments and misrepresenting what the other side is saying. In this video, we'll be going over a video by Eric Debunks, and as usual, I have nothing against Eric, and nobody should go after him or harass him. In this video, Eric makes the false claim made by many people on the left that the X-Men have always been woke. Now, that's simply not true, and I'll explain why. Anyway, let's hear what he has to say.
So I want to point out, though, that the X-Men that we've known, the ones that we have pretty much grown up with, have always been quote-unquote woke. Because if we try to define what woke means to a lot of these channels, it's just diversity, right? That's all it is.
Okay, this is the straw man that I'm talking about. Nobody who's against wokeness has ever said that woke equals diversity. Diversity itself is not inherently woke. In fact, I would say that when diversity is done right, it can be a great thing. It's only when diversity is done badly that it's woke. My definition of woke is that it's a slang word when used by conservatives when referring to entertainment that usually means an overcompensation made to fix a perceived problem that doesn't exist. In other words, it's a change that's made to, quote, fix a perceived social injustice. In this case, with X-Men 97, the change was more gender from male to non-binary. This change was made to, quote, fix the perceived problem, that being X-Men's lack of diversity. And that's the problem that didn't exist. As we can see, the X-Men is already very diverse. Now, I'll try to give examples of what I mean by diversity done right and diversity done wrong. The giant-sized X-Men team is a great example of diversity done right, but we'll get to that later. The Justice League animated series is another example of diversity done right. Let's take a look at the original team. You have the standard members, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, and instead of Barry Allen, we've got the Wally West Flash. And to show the team's diversity, instead of Hal Jordan, they gave us the John Stewart Green Lantern. And instead of Hawkman, they gave us Hawkgirl. Now the reason why I say it's diversity done right is because they didn't make any changes to add diversity. They didn't race swap Hal Jordan, they simply picked a different Green Lantern. And with Hawkgirl, they didn't gender swap Hawkman, they chose her instead of him. Now, while yes, these choices were made to show the team's diversity, they weren't woke because no changes were made. Again, Hal Jordan was not race swapped, and Hawkman was not gender swapped. They didn't add diversity, they simply chose members who were diverse and who were already members of the team. Now here's an example of diversity done bad. One of the most diverse teams of all media is actually not X-Men, but G.I. Joe. So adding diversity to this team through race swaps or gender swaps is totally unnecessary since the team is already diverse. Now this is why the G.I. Joe movies were woke. In Rise of Cobra, Ripcord was race swapped from a white man to a black man, and Breaker was race swapped from a white man to an Arab man. In the Snake Eyes movies, Snake Eyes himself was race swapped from a white man to an Asian man. And even in the comics, Snake Eyes was gender swapped, as well as others. What makes this woke is that there are a ton of diverse G.I. Joe members to choose from. For example, in Rise of Cobra, Marlon Wayans could have played Stalker, Doc, Big Glob, Alpine, Iceberg, among several other black men, instead of race swapping Ripcord. This was an unnecessary change, especially when there were plenty of black male characters to choose from. So to recap, Justice League did diversity right by showing diversity without any racial, sexuality, or gender changes made. Therefore, it was not woke. G.I. Joe did diversity wrong when they added diversity to a team that was already diverse by making several changes to the race and gender of characters, therefore making it woke. I hope that was simple enough that even an SAW could understand it.
It's diversity and people talking about their lives and people being open about their sexuality. The X-Men have always done that.
Okay, Eric brings up being open about sexuality and claiming that the X-Men have always done that. Now, as usual, that's a lie. First, when Eric says open about sexuality, he means being gay. Second, X-Men, like all mainstream comics, couldn't do that at the time because of the Comics Code Authority. And third, When they eventually could, it was 30 years, 3 decades after X-Men's creation. So to say that the X-Men have always talked about being gay, that is a complete lie, making Eric a liar.
Liar!
Also, yes, changing an X-Men character or any character to be gay or having them come out as gay after them being straight for decades is woke because, again, this is a change that is not necessary as the team is already diverse, and it's a massive, significant alteration to the character, changing them completely. It's like changing Aquaman from the King of the Sea to the Queen of the Sky. He's not the same character at all. The late Stanley himself hated the idea of changing a character's sexuality. Listen to his reaction when someone suggested that Spider-Man be bisexual.
He's becoming bisexual? Spider-Man? Who have you been talking to? I don't know, seriously, I don't know anything about that. And if it's true, I'm going to make a couple of phone calls.
The late Darwin Cook also hated the idea of changing a character's sexuality.
I don't want to see characters who've been straight for 60 years become lesbians overnight because the writer's too stupid or uncreative to come up with something decent.
Now let's hear what Eric has to say about the diversity of the original X-Men team.
So let me show you here. This was the original lineup for the X-Men. There's 5 white people, 4 of them are men, with 1 woman.
Eric laughs at the fact that white people can be diverse. I guess to him, all white people are all the same. Well, he's purposely omitting Professor X, who is disabled, and the left count that as diverse. Also, I would argue that white people are the most diverse race. We come from many different countries and cultures. For example, Beast's real last name is McCoy, so he's most likely Irish. White people also have many diverse physical characteristics. For example, most of the original X-Men team had brown hair. Angel had blonde hair. He was also rich, which made him economically diverse from the rest of the team. But I guess white men don't count as diverse to the people on the left.
With 1 woman who gets objectified all the time in these early comic books, right? I'm not passing judgment. Follow me on this. I'm not passing judgment.
He mentions Jean Grey, and to him, since she's a woman, she's the only one that counts as diverse in his mind. But besides being a woman, she's also a ginger, and gingers are some of the most rare groups of people on the earth. So technically, that makes her a minority. But again, she's white, so she doesn't count as diverse in leftist minds. Also, he claims that he's not judging this comic when he clearly is. He claims that Jean was objectified. Now, the left claimed that the right would hate the X-Men comics if they came out today for being, quote, woke. But it's clear by his own criticism that the left are the ones who would hate the X-Men comics, since, as he just claimed, they objectified Jean.
This is what the original series was, right? And it got compared as like a bootleg knockoff Fantastic Four.
Actually, no. It was compared to a bootleg knockoff of Doom Patrol. Now, here's the description of Doom Patrol from Comic Vine. The world's strangest heroes, a team of outcasts with some of the most bizarre powers and abilities, gathered together by Niles Coulter, the chief, to battle evil. Now, does that description sound familiar? I mean, heck, even the leader is in a wheelchair. So that's basically what the X-Men were meant to be. They were simply outcasts. They were kind of just the opposite of the Fantastic Four, in that the Fantastic Four are beloved heroes, and the X-Men were hated despite their heroic deeds. So Stanley was simply exploring what it would be like to be heroes hated by the public instead of loved, much like Spider-Man was sometimes hated because of the bad press he got from the Daily Bugle. So initially, the X-Men were never meant to be part of a discriminated group.
Didn't perform very well. And matter of fact, the X-Men as we know them today would not have been a thing had they not have gone woke. So imagine this is where the X-Men now, like they've lasted all these years as this team. And then all of a sudden they decided this was going to be the new lineup for the X-Men. Can you imagine what would happen if this change were to happen in 2024?
Nothing. Nothing would happen because this is not a woke change, and I'll explain why it's not later.
So they introduce a black woman from Africa, a Russian guy, a Canadian, a guy from Ireland, a Native American, a Japanese guy, and a German Catholic super religious character that looks like the devil. Could you imagine how their heads would explode if this were to happen today?
Okay, the reason why this isn't woke is because this change wasn't made to, quote, fix a perceived social injustice. Like I said earlier, this is an example of diversity done well. This change wasn't made to add different races to the X-Men. This change was made to make the X-Men more worldly, so that the X-Men weren't just Americans. Eric even just said that these new members were mostly from different countries. The fact that some of them happen to be different races is coincidental. The reason why I say this is because of the new characters. The majority are still white. You see, as I proved earlier, the left only think of diversity in terms of race, gender, or sexuality. They don't see white people as diverse. But as we can see here, white people are very culturally diverse. And that's what Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum are going for. Cultural diversity and not racial diversity. Another reason why this team is not woke is because there aren't any race swaps here. Storm is not just a race swapped Jean Grey, Sunfire is just not a race swapped Iceman, and Thunderbird isn't a race swapped Beast. Another reason why they're not woke is because there are no gender swaps. Again, Storm is not a gender swapped Cyclops. Unlike X-23 Wolverine, Kate Bishop Hawkeye, or Riri Williams Ironheart. Another reason why it's not woke is because there is no passing of a title. Title passing is done in a lot of woke media. Some examples of this is Miles Morales Spider-Man, Jane Foster Thor, and Sam Wilson Captain America. Nightcrawler didn't take Beast's title, Storm didn't take Jean Grey's title of Marvel Girl, and Banshee didn't take Angel's title. Another reason why this team is not woke is because the men weren't pushed aside to make room for all the women. Storm was the only additional woman, and she didn't treat all the men like crap. So as much as the left would like to claim that this team is woke, they're really not. Like the Justice League, this is another example of diversity done right. Now Eric claims that the X-Men were always woke because it's a team with women in it.
Some of the most popular women in comic books came from the X-Men. Like, they were the most powerful characters. A lot of them were not straight. A lot of them were women of color.
This is yet again another straw man from Eric and the people on the left. Just because a superhero team has women in it doesn't make it woke. And this is such a weak argument, and it's easily debunked. There are so many so-called strong women in entertainment that people who are against wokeness love, such as Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, Princess Leia, and the original Tomb Raider. Let's take a look at the X-Men again for an example of a strong woman done right and a strong woman done wrong. What makes a real strong woman is one who is emotionally strong yet still feminine, and a woman who doesn't demonize or belittle men, and a woman who treats men with respect. For example, while Mystique was a villain in the first X-Men movies, she still seemed to treat the male members of the Brotherhood with respect, especially Magneto. And Magneto in return gave her respect.
I'm in.
She's good.
You have no idea.
However, in the more recent X-Men movies, Mystique didn't respect the men at all, as we can see from this clip, where she made some very sexist and misandrist comments.
And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
So, as we can see, this version of Mystique goes against the whole point of the X-Men. She hates half of the world's population simply for being born men. And that's what makes it woke. So again, woke, not woke. Eric mentions the women pictured are women of color, but yet again, simply having a team with racial minorities doesn't make it woke, unless they are race swaps, title swaps, or so on. One could argue that Psylocke is technically a race swap, but she is still the same Betsy, just in another body. And this was done to make her a ninja, and make her powers a little bit more exciting instead of just another psychic on the team. Eric also claims that the women pictured are gay. This again is not true. Psylocke was with Angel, Storm has been with Forge and Black Panther, Shadowcat was with Colossus, Rogue was with Gambit, Jubilee was attracted to Tim Drake, and Rachel Summers was with Nightcrawler. Now, to be fair to him, There is probably some sexuality retcon that I'm not aware of, but I stand with Stanley and Darwin Cook and agree with them that it's wrong to retcon sexuality, and those retcons don't count. By the way, the artwork on this cover sucks. Also having only women is segregation, which the left used to be against, but now they're in favor of it for some reason. What else does Eric have to say?
And now you have people in real life hating these characters because they're different. These people are the bad guys. They're the ones that the X-Men fight against. You cannot be fans of these characters and have that opinion. It just doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yet another straw man from Eric. We don't hate these characters at all. We don't hate them because they're women or because they are a different race. We hate the retcons done to these characters. We hate the race swaps, gender swaps, and sexuality swaps. It's the modern day writers who actually hate these characters. Because if they actually loved them, they wouldn't change them into something that they're not. If they loved Morph, they wouldn't change his gender. If they loved Iceman, they wouldn't change his sexuality. If they loved Wolverine, they wouldn't replace him. So the writers are clearly the bad guys. Also, as I have proven in an earlier video, the writers of X-Men 97 are sexist, racist bigots who hate straight white men. The journalists who write about X-Men 97 are bigots who hate half of the country. So it's clear that they are the bad guys that the X-Men would fight against. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I'm Alpha Eagle. God bless you for watching. God bless America. And I pray that Eric and the people on the left stop using straw men to deceive their audience. And I also pray that they realize that they are the bigots and stop it with their evil, hateful ways.